I'm Pat DePillo, World Language Department Chair for the Falmouth Public Schools, and this is another edition of Ciao Falmouth, Fall 2021. But initially, I'd like to roll the clock back to the spring, when I spent hours writing a grant because the State Department of Ed, in particular the World Language Specialist, was offering grant monies there were two goals. Goal one, which is the one I chose for Falmouth, is proficiency testing. Goal two is introducing the world language standards, which we're also incorporating into our curricula. So fortunately for us, we were awarded the grant, and that allows students in grades 8, 10, 11, and 12 to utilize this proficiency testing as their final exams. When we get the data, next summer, teachers and I will look at the results and figure out what needs to be tweaked, adjusted in our instruction and our curricular units, which is a whole separate topic. Our world language curricula is all wrapped up in backward planning, understanding by design units that need to be revised, updated, and organized in terms of AP theme and proficiency level, and hopefully we have units that fit into each category, and if not, that will tell us what we still need to do. But in terms of analyzing the data, it will help us, because we have heterogeneous classes. Some school districts take this information and dump it into their scheduling programs and come up with scheduling students in the correct levels. Because we have heterogeneous classes, we can do two things. It will help us in terms of grade 8 and entering freshmen and sophomores going into their junior year. It help teachers, I don't want to say track, that's not the right word, and we'd no longer use it, not even place, but those heterogeneous classes have CP levels and honors levels in them. So based on the final exam results, we'll have to translate numbers into letter grades, first of all, and then based on the information we see, it will help teachers define instruction for those students we feel are in the CP range and as well as the honors range. And to help do that, we as a department can generate team goals, professional practice, and student growth goals that will speak to the areas of improvement that the data illuminates. So in order to make the most beneficial use of professional development time, departmental time, PD planning time, I and the teachers developed a professional learning plan which goes monthly and syncs with the executive professional development plan, and includes things for them to help students and things for them to help themselves in terms of instruction to prepare for this special year of testing, because, well, grade 8 is at Lawrence, but grades 10, 11, and 12 are here. And those will be given as final exams for all world language students. So we have things like All Cape Day, where it was focused on interpersonal speaking, and teachers have built their professional practice goals around using authentic resources in all levels and sharing those materials. Then in December, we'll be working with one of our textbook distributors terms of developing interpersonal speaking tasks. We have language lab training because that will help students use the language outside, I won't say outside of the classroom, it is the classroom, but there are specific, it has specific software that's conducive to interpersonal communication. So there are a lot of, and then we're incorporating newer elements of world language standards, which are cultural proficiency, social justice, social emotional learning, and hopefully, I don't even say hopefully, through the use of integrated performance assessments given at the end of every term, which assess interpretive, presentational, interpersonal speaking. Students make, and teachers give students feedback, I give teachers feedback. The whole process just keeps moving and making progress, and hopefully, I don't like to use the word hopefully, so I'll just eliminate that, encourages growth throughout the year so that students are well prepared to take this testing. So that's one thing that's going on. The other is that we've just had, 2 weeks ago, we've just had a very successful MAFLA conference in the state, of which I was the chair. That is a culmination of 2 years of work. And the theme was creating cross-cultural connections. So it's all about the kinds of things that people who are making connections with people in other countries need to know, and also things that are specific to instruction, because the actual indicators do have intercultural competency. So it provided a lot of instruction and a lot of techniques and strategies for teachers to use, as well as other aspects like interpersonal speaking, like how to embed the grammar in what you do without it becoming, it's like putting spinach in brownies. You want to hide it, but it's there, you have to have it, but it's not a be all and end all. It's the means to an end. What do I say? How do I use this expression? Yes, I need to know it, but I don't have to sit and conjugate it or use, do a worksheet that has verb forms and things like that all over the place. Our own Magali Shabarbi was part of this conference on a Sunday afternoon. She did a cooking demonstration on Moroccan chicken tagine. It was wonderful. Showed her cookbooks. She herself is from an island off the coast of France. Her husband is from Morocco. So she had the authentic cooking pots, and she showed us cookbooks. It was just wonderful. I mean, there was a yoga demonstration. There were round tables, keynotes, live Zooms for teachers to watch. Then there's a series of what we call bite-size. There are 15-minute clips, deep dives that are 60-minute clips, and simulives where the presenter is there in the chat to answer questions, all of which is archived until January. And half of this department, I'm very proud to say, half of this department, teachers here at the high school and teachers at the junior high, attended. And so we're in the process of sharing, what they learned and how they can share with their colleagues in order to help colleagues embed those kinds of things into their instruction. So that's what's been going on in terms of world language teaching and learning. I'm trying to think of, we're going to get our exchange programs up and running again. And of course, as things unfold throughout the year, we'll have our testing, we'll have our award ceremonies, we'll have World Language Week, and I will keep you posted. And I'm also going to write a newsletter and include the letter that I give to parents, or have teachers give parents on Meet Your Teacher Night, so that the community and parents are informed about where we stand with proficiency, why we're giving this testing, what it's all about, when it is. Does it cost them anything? No, it does not. The grant paid for the testing, and I bought headsets for the students in grade 8 at Lawrence because they use Chromebooks when they do this testing, and they need they need to have a headset that connects with a USB port. And all the questions that people have been asking, and so that parents are informed. And I hope to post this on the website, so you should, in a short period of time, you should be able to see that, and along with this video. And I think that's all I have to say today. And I would just like to thank Susan Schmidt for being a guest on this program and explaining about her award and how she used it with students. It was very interesting to see the work of, not only a native speaker, but a native poet work with students on, poetry, which is, they call it a poetry slam, but it's actually we call it the spoken word. So it's the American, it's the Francophone equivalent. I'd like to introduce Susan Schmidt, whom I'm sure all of you know. She teaches French here at Falmouth High School, and is in fact the French 5 AP teacher, so runs all the exchange programs. But today she'd like to talk about an interesting award that she received, and I and Terry Medeiros were in the class last Friday observing this poetry slam or spoken word, which I found fascinating. So Susan will explain how that all came to be, what it's all about, what the class does, and how she intends to continue to utilize this resource from Montreal. Susan?
Hi. I was very fortunate. I'm a member of AATF, the American Association of Teachers of French, as well as Le Centre de la Francophonie des Amériques. It's a Francophone center that's centered out of Quebec, but deals with all of the French speakers and French people who love French culture, even if they don't speak French, in the Americas. So from North America all through South and Central America, the islands where French is spoken, and they have a lot of programs trying to unite the group of people, because we are over 66 million, I believe they said, in
yes.
the program. And so they offered an opportunity this week where we're filming. I know it may not be when you see it. November 3rd through November 12th is National French Week, to encourage the study of French and to let people know what some of the good things that we are doing with French are, and the ways that it's used, because the Francophone world is quite vast. And so they offered an opportunity for teachers to apply for this program, to have a guest speaker zoomed in, and it was a Canadian slam artist that was the prize. And so we each had to write how and why we wanted to use it, if we had used poetry in our class. And with my students in AP French, last year at the end of French 4 honors, we did a poetry unit. And so I was encouraging the students. We looked at poetry through the ages, from the very classical verses through much more free form, and I encouraged them to write their own poems. They had one to perform for their final assessment in that unit, that was an oral interpretation of their poem, and then one to do that was a written poem. We studied the different types of rhymes in French, but I said, because that just adds an extra layer to the complicatedness of it, that they didn't have to worry about rhymes because they weren't classic French poets, but to choose a subject that they were most interested in. Now, these students were also one of the classes that has been the most affected right now by the pandemic. Many of them, some of them applied to do the French exchange, which we had to put them on hold when that happened because we had more applicants than were needed. And so our hope had been that we would have an exchange this year, but as you all know the story of the pandemic, my students that year didn't get to travel. And this year, of course, traveling abroad might have been acceptable for us. If we're fully vaccinated, we could travel to Europe. But Europeans they just had the door opened yesterday, November 8th, to start traveling again if they're fully vaccinated. And so I said these kids didn't get an opportunity to study abroad. And their whole junior year was affected by the pandemic with our hybrid schedule of being in person some and out some hybrid, with remote possibilities. And so I really wanted them to have an opportunity that was extra special. And there were 80 applicants for what I learned were 25 workshops. And Falmouth was very fortunate to get one of these workshops. And so the coordinator from the Centre de la Francophonie des Amériques met with me in mid-October, and we worked out a plan of how the Poetry Slam workshop would go. And my obligation was to get the students ready for that. So in the week prior to the November 5th workshop, we studied poems by the slam artist that we were assigned, and her name is Amélie Prévost. She is from Montreal, and she has been working with poetry from her presentation, she said, for about 12 years. And she has won a number of poetry slams in Canada as well as even in France. She went, they have a spoken word slam competition every year, and she has participated in that and won one of the years, which was great. She's an actress, and you could certainly tell she had a lot of training, the way she talked with students and interacted. She slowed down greatly for us to understand, although the kids were a lot more used to her accent because we had been dealing with her poems and seeing them on YouTube videos. And she has a recent publication, and she had a video of that on her website. And if the students so choose, they could even follow her on Facebook, and probably, I would assume she's on Instagram as well, although I haven't looked for her there. But they got a chance to know a little bit about her style. And then she did the class for us, and it was one of the most incredible experiences I've had over Zoom, which we learned that it has its good uses and has some distractions. But she spent the better part of about 80 minutes working with us on how to write some poems. And so she started us brainstorming. The first top prompt she gave us was to write down 5 things that drive us crazy. And then we turned them into a poem. And it was quite a simple way of doing it by just adding I am, or you are, or we are, prior to whatever we said. And she gave us the opportunity to share, I think, about 3 poems, and I got to share one of mine. My kids were a little nervous sharing their own. And then the next activity she worked us through was to write a letter to someone. And she said this can be any kind of a letter. It can be to someone that maybe you love and don't know how to tell them, or it could be knowing that she was working with teenagers. It could be to your parents because, maybe there's some things that are hard to say that might be on your heart, different things like that. And so the kids spent a little time writing a letter. And then she asked us to think about, what would be the most logical way to put that together into a poem. And one of my seniors shared her poem, and she wrote about things that she really wants to do at some time in the future with travel and things like that. And so my task later this week with my students is to take some of what they started with and have them finish a poem and maybe record it orally, because slam and poetry is meant to be heard out loud. And as we said, it doesn't need to rhyme, but there were a lot of techniques that Amélie showed us that help us, because we know that repetition is really important. When you hear a song, any type of a song, there's usually a lot of repetition or things that come about. And so that is something that we'll encourage the students to do, and really personalizing things. And the other thing we learned fits in well with our proficiency that we've been working towards, which is it doesn't have to be perfect. And so even if things sound a little weird, one of the kids had written something about, I think, a pet, and it said, "You are, my pet who barks or makes noise," or "You are my messy room," and just different things like that. And so when you start to think about it, what becomes important is what you get from the poem or what you put into it. And so it's a technique that I'm going to definitely encourage these students, and hopefully even my students in French 4 honors this year when we get to that poetry unit, to think about some of these techniques. But it was one of the most awesome experiences I've had, and I've decided that I would like to be Amélie's best friend in Massachusetts, so hopefully she'll come visit us sometime. But right now with the pandemic, it's not possible, but it was a really incredible experience, and it was nice to share it with Pat and Terry.
I thoroughly enjoyed it, because how often do you get to even connect, I guess is the best word, through Zoom, with someone in a different country, or a native speaker in this case. And the French are definitely different than the Canadians in terms of, it's like any time you travel abroad, once you go to one specific little city, you're going to hear accents and words that are specific to them only. It's just like our Boston accent and New York accent and Southern accent. Any in the specific words we use for soda or pop or grinders or heroes or subs, whatever we call these different things. But the Canadian French, not only are there different words, and Susan will correct me if I'm wrong. When you go shopping in France, it's faire du magasin.
You can do that. Faire des boutiques, faire des magasins.
Okay, so faire
magasiner.
That is the one. That's what I was going to say. I always thought the Canadians use magasinier.
Yeah.
So
they do, but there are also regional differences everywhere.
See? Because
the city that I lived in when I spent 2 years in Nantes, and there was a street called Rue du Crabillon, and so shopping on this street, which would probably be equivalent to shopping on Newbury Street for people here in Massachusetts with Boston shops, was Crabillonnais, because it was La Rue Crabillon. But when you go to another part of France or Canada or Haiti or wherever you might be traveling in the Francophone world, it's different.
Well, see, I always thought that was Americanized, just as Spanish is Americanized. In Spain, the word for car is coche. In South America and Central America and Mexico, it's carro.
Yeah.
So that part is always fascinating to me. And then her pronunciation was so different. It was some points hard for me to understand because I don't hear French every day. And when I do, it's French from France. So the accent's a lot more. And who do I hear but Rebecca and Susan and Dan and Kristen at the junior high. So, you know.
Well, interestingly, one difference that I discovered that I thought was hysterical. In France, they say le hot dog for a hot dog.
Oh.
In Canada, they say le chien chaud. They
geez.
translate it into French.
Well,
So,
the French always say
differences.
les jeans, le weekend. When I studied in Spain, the month, this is going back a long time ago, we didn't hear, one word in the whole month, one word of English. We were on our way to I don't know if we were to some museum, and getting on the bus, and I heard the driver say tickets. I'm like, he spoke an English word. It wasn't Spanish. What is that? What's going on here? So the French have a lot more Americanized expression. Le hot dog, but it's chien chaud.
Chien chaud in Canada.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I
so
spent a
funny.
summer between my junior and senior years of college in Quebec City at the Université Laval. They have summer immersion programs, and I that year came in second place in an AATF sponsored competition, and so first place was an all expenses paid trip to Paris, but I came in second place, so I had an all expenses paid trip to Quebec and 6 weeks of study in this Université Laval immersion program. So I got to hear a lot of the Canadian accents there and start to distinguish and learn the differences. They can be quite challenging. I know when I lived in France, there was a French-Canadian film that came out. It was called Jésus de Montréal. And I had heard the advertisements for it, and I said, I think I'd like to go see that. My French friends said, we don't want to go see that. We won't understand the way they speak. So I ended up going to the movies by myself, and about 5 minutes into the movie, I'd gotten used to hearing that accent again. And I think my kids seemed to feel like they understood because we'd been hearing that Canadian accent all week, so they felt pretty good about their understanding.
The accents in general are interesting. We, for many years, Bill Mock taught Spanish here, and his Spanish was Castilian.
Castellano. Yeah.
Now, Molly is her husband is South American. So her accent favors the South American, so that's a whole different flavor. Instead of yo, it's jo.
Yeah.
So it's just just the different ways people. It's perfectly, I can understand when she's speaking, but the Castilian is always, a lot different.
Yeah. Well, part of my goal is to expose our students to la francophonie, the French-speaking world, and they get to hear people speaking with accents from Africa, from the Caribbean islands, from France, and other European accents are a little bit different, even Switzerland, Belgium, even, technically they could hear French in Vietnam or Laos or Cambodia as former French-speaking colonies. And so getting them exposed to that and realizing how universal French can be, it's really incredible.
Definitely.
So it was a worthwhile experience and one that I would recommend.
What did the kids say?
I asked them because I didn't have them yesterday with it being a C day, so I had them today, and they were telling me all about their prom. And many of them are hockey players, so the field hockey girls won their game last night, so they move up in the next round of competition for state seating and all of that. And I asked them, and they said, "Oh, Madame, we really had a great time. We loved it. We understood, and we really like her too." So it was really good.
That's great.
So I'm looking forward to playing a little bit more as we end out this first quarter with poetry.
Yeah.
And then we'll move into our next unit. But
Yeah, it was
everything
great.
is great
What
to
did-
help them build it.
What was her
Terry
reaction?
loved it.
Yeah.
She's one of my Facebook buddies, and
Oh.
she posted on there that one of her great joys is getting to see what's going on in some of the classrooms. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I had invited her, and she felt that it was an incredible program and very rich. And it's something that maybe will make our students think, oh, hey, I really want to travel, and maybe I can't afford to go as far as Europe or some of the other places where French is spoken, but I might make it to Montreal or to Quebec and get that opportunity.
Sure.
So hopefully we're opening more worlds to them, and to see what really is in our area. The film that Elise Béjean shared with the students, that was produced by members of the Centre de la Francophonie des Amériques, was really a great introduction to hear kids from all different parts of the world saying a little bit in French, but particularly in our hemisphere. So it was great.
Great. Well, I just thought when when Susan showed me the letter announcing the award, I thought, well, this is worthy of congratulations. And then when I attended, I could see why. As I said, just the connection with somebody, a native speaker, over electronic, equipment is just boggling. So it was great. It's great. So again, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm glad my students got the benefit.
Well,
of
absolutely.
having
Well, that is the bottom line. Yeah. It's
and then
what
I will profit from what I've learned to incorporate that into my unit
of course.
this year.
Of course.
So, always learning. It's a good thing.
Well, that's true. That is true. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Merci.
De rien. Again, my name's Pat DePillo, and I am signing off. So I will just say for this edition, Fall 2021, Ciao Falmouth.